Well, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers give up their crown for the NFC South. I think Carolina and Atlanta would certainly like to take that mantle, but I guess we'll get into that today. My name's Luke. This is Michael. We are the game. We're going to break down the predictions / power rankings for the NFC South today, obviously looking at the 2025 season. So, without any ado whatsoever, let's just get into it. So, Michael, I think you're going to lead us off telling me about what you think of the Saints. Now, I kind of deliberately didn't include them in my intro about who might take the crown, just kind of a spoiler. But let me know what you think about the Saints here.
I think the biggest thing about the Saints, right, has been Derek Carr, right? Like that whole situation, I think, is a real curveball for at least from an outsider's perspective on the Saints. I think that was a real curveball. I think they've added some pieces that if he was there to kind of hold the ship for a part of the season or the whole season, um, would be interesting. But I think as of right now, it looks like they're going to toss Tyler Shuck right in there and see what he can do. I think the big question there becomes what does Alvin Kamara have left in the tank? Because he's going to need him to survive, I think. I think I do like their wide receiver core with Reed Heed and Olave and Brandon Cooks, although I wasn't overly impressed with him when he was a Cowboy. Um, the other thing I think is they shored up with that new left tackle, Calvin Banks Jr. If he is really as good as kind of he looks to be, I think their offensive line will be really good. And then of course Taysom Hill is like the wild man of the South there. So I think he's got some tools. I think it's just going to come down to what does he really bring to the table? What does he have to offer? The other thing I think that I tend to overlook is how good their defense really has been. They were second best in that division, and it was pretty close to as good as Tampa Bay's defense. I do think they have a very hard start to the season. It looks like against Arizona, 49ers, Seahawks, and then Buffalo. So I could see them going 0-4 very easily for the season, but I still think they have a lot of winnable games. I'm actually going to put them in the 8-win category. I think it's going to be close, but I think that there's 8 winnable games. Let's say the 5-9. I thought about putting them 8-12. I'd say 5-9. They did really well again, pretty well, I should say, against their division last time. I think that if they can do equally well in their division, everything, I think they'll be all right. That's going to be my call, though.
Okay, all right, that could be interesting. It's hard to not win a few games, so I get that.
Yeah. Yep. What do you think the Falcons are going to do this season?
The Falcons are a big fun question. It would seem there are several big questions with them. It would seem that they've handed the reins off to Michael Penix Jr. I have this weird conspiracy theory about Kirk Cousins being the starter again this season, but I haven't read anything that makes me think that for sure. It's just from watching his throwing motion last year, and it kind of changed halfway through the season where you could tell it seemed like he wasn't like his back plant foot or whatever you call it exactly. His back foot, he stopped like actually pushing off of it, and he started like he just had it in the air when he's throwing. It's just a longer throwing motion, and his foot was in the air. And I was like, I wonder if that's that Achilles that he tore. It is not all the way healed and has now gotten swollen. And anyways, maybe it's just not all the way back. And this year it would be. This is my nutso conspiracy theory for some reason. I don't know why. It will probably be Michael Penix Jr. And a lot of people seem really excited about him. I need to see it. It just, I don't really trust quarterbacks that I've seen for 3 games or 5 games or whatever it was. So I need to see a real sample size. He can win me over, absolutely. Drake London, you've got Bijan Robinson, a great running back going with you. They had an actually like solid offensive line and some decent supplemental pieces like Kyle Pitts and such. But like, I just don't know yet. And their defense, the path to them being good there and maybe winning this division is their defense just can't be terrible again. And it was terrible last year. I think numerically, like points allowed, it wasn't tragically bad, but they were like the one team that was worse at pressuring the quarterback than my Cardinals. So that's where they have to get better. Now they kind of address this in the draft, but these are young guys. These are 22-year-olds you're asking to come in as like, all right, guys, save the day. And I don't know that I trust that situation. They did a couple of other things, but they also lost Grady Jarrett, who's been there forever. So I kind of see them what will look like treading water, but it will be really, we've shifted from some of the old guys that were here to new guys. And like, I don't think they're quite ready to win the division just yet. Um, I think that the NFC South has a bit tougher schedule overall than it did last year, but I could be misreading that. It could be just again kind of even. I need one more year from Atlanta to prove me wrong. So for the moment, I'm actually going to put them in the same division you did. I could see them winning like 8 or 9 games, but I see them winning fewer than that before I see them winning any more than that. So I'll put them here instead of the 8 through 12 just for that reason. It'd be cool to see them challenge Tampa, but I don't think they're there quite yet. So show me what you got for the Panthers.
Wasn't it funny to think that, the Panthers, who were not good last year, um, they have like the veteran quarterback of the three we've talked about so far. That seems strange in its own right. I think that there were a lot of positives that happened last year in that regard from an offensive line standpoint. I think Bryce got sacked 60 times his first season and only around 30 last season, so that's a positive.
Yeah.
And I think that allowed him some more consistency and all of that. Obviously, they've added some more in the air or through the air weapons for him through the draft. But I think the favorite thing I like about where they sit on offense going into this season is their running back core. Hubbard has been phenomenal, and then they added Rico Dowdle. Now, Rico Dowdle, I think, played a very serviceable role with the Cowboys last year. They really didn't trust him at all in the first part of the season. I don't really think they envisioned even trying to use him in the way that he was used the last half of the season. But I think he played really well. He's not got a lot of injuries or any of that. So I think that makes them a pretty entertaining group of running backs. I still do think that offensive line is one of the not greatest in the NFL. And that's still going to be their problem on offense, and they're going to need to figure out a solution to that works, so that either they can have a running game that's effective, and preferably and some version of a passing game as well. The big story, though, there is honestly their defense. They gave up 534 points against last year, which is absurd. I don't know what the right word is. It's horrible. If you thought the other defense was bad, it's like this is really bad, and some of that's injuries, but a good portion of that was just an absolute inability to stop run or even remotely pressure a quarterback, which they tried to address in the draft by taking 2 edge rushers. Um, and so I'll be interested to see if they can go ahead and produce with that and come back around. With that being said, I still think that they're in the cellar of this group. Um, I kind of want to say that they'll have 6 wins, so I guess to be nice, I'll put them maybe in the same category. But in the reality, I still think they're the bottom of this division. Maybe they have that 5 or 6 win and end up in this group. I think I could easily have put them in the 0-6 group as well. But just to be nice, and I'm a very passive fan of Carolina, so I'll throw them up there.
Okay.
What do you think about Tampa Bay? Have you seen any regression there? Or do you see them still pulling out on top?
Short answer is I still see them coming out on top. They one of the issues they ran into last year for about 4 games, I want to say, longer for one, because Godwin went down and never came back. Was they lost both wide receivers there for a minute and had guys that no one had ever heard of catching passes, and they were still pretty watchable offense. That was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
They addressed that a bit this year. They added 2 guys that should be pretty useful year one. Emeka, everyone's struggling to say this name, so bear with me, right?
Yeah.
Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State is a first-round wide receiver, and everybody seems pretty high on him. I think even last year he might have just gone in the second round, but it would have been the top of the second. So he's quite good. Ohio just churns him out, apparently. And he should be a solid addition because eventually we keep saying this, eventually Mike Evans is going to get old. And Chris Godwin seems to be the more injury prone of the group.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you don't want, you're obviously a passing offense that needs good wide receiver play. You're not all about tight end like Arizona or, running back like, the Eagles or the Ravens and such. So we're looking for wide receivers here in Tampa. I say we, I'm not in there. Not in Tampa, but
yeah.
They really wanted to strengthen that. And then they got Tez Johnson late, who a lot of people had going in the 3rd or 4th round. And he's he is small. I think he hurt himself at the combine some because this guy's like 155 pounds and he runs like 4.55. So
Yeah.
it's not super fast and not really big. But if you watch him, it's like this guy actually looks fast on the field, even if he's
Yeah.
not actually fast on the track. So I do think he'll have some real success here and there. And long term, it could be a guy for them if he can stay healthy, which is something I can't help but say for smaller guys. So anyway, I think their defense will be just fine. Hassan Reddick's reuniting with Todd Bowles, which should be, I think, yeah, Todd Bowles is still there, I believe. Suddenly I had a brain fart and I couldn't remember if he was still there. Yeah, so they should still be good. They should still win that division. And I could actually see them being even better than last year and maybe getting up to more like 11 wins, but not cresting into the elite tier of, I don't think they're going to challenge for like a 1 seed in the NFC or anything, but they should solidly win this division. Can they hold off the people underneath them from growing enough to take that seed? So yeah, I'll put Tampa there 8-12. If I had to pick one of those numbers, I'd say 11. I'd say that they gained just a little bit of ground from last year because I think people forget that they had significant injuries last year. So I'd give them 11, but I don't entirely trust them to just take off and go 12, 13, 14 wins. So yeah, that's kind of how I have it lining up. So do you have any closing thoughts on any of this? I was going to ask you, if you were going left to right, highest to lowest within that 5 to 9 bracket, would you have it at this, or would it be in this order? Saints, Falcons, Panthers, or would you move it around a little bit?
I think that's really difficult because we're really betting on two rookie quarterbacks that we haven't seen tons of. For the little bit we've seen and that he's been around the NFL more, I think I'd put my money on Penix. So I'd probably put them on the left, and then the Saints, and then finally the Panthers. Again, I think there's room for the Panthers to surprise us, but that's what it would be. Is I think the Panthers would have to surprise me for that to happen. I think the Saints defense is too good. I think Atlanta has kind of more consistency. So that's how I'd put it. Is that aligned with what you would think as well?
Yeah, the one I really like what Carolina did with the offense. I think it should be pretty good this year. I like their running backs. I like their wide receivers. I like their quarterback as long as he can stay upright. To your point, they did improve the offensive line. I think part of the reason he got less sacks last year is because they benched him for a few games. But still, even if you were to extrapolate that out, it would still be less over the course of the season. So he is getting better, and that's good. So, but my big questions are on defense. The only encouragement I could try to glean from this on the defensive side is something, oddly enough, Skip Bayless said. I think it was about the Cowboys, where you had a really bad defense one year, several years ago, and then going into the next season, they said, "Well, why would you think it's going to be better?" And he's just like it's really hard to be that bad of a defense 2 years in a row. You're either really bad because you're really old, and then you go young, or you're really young and young guys grow up and get better at football. So it's just really uncommon for a team to have. How many points do you say they had scored on them? 524 or something like that?
534, yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, that's more than 30 a game. That's insane.
Yeah.
So it's just not easy to be that bad.
Yeah.
So I know that's a weird way of suggesting they might be better, but I think that's their big thing is if they can get better on defense, that'll actually carry them more than the stuff on offense did.
Yeah, but trying to overcome 100, even if you could change your points against by 100 points, you'd still have been the worst defense. I think that, like you said, they'll be better. I'm curious if it'll be that much better. So we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, that'll wrap up our NFC South. We'll get into the AFC next. So that wraps up the NFC in entirety. Yeah. So we're going to go AFC East pretty soon. Would be fun to get into those teams. It's the AFC looks pretty exciting this year. So anyone who feels like it, we appreciate likes and subscribes down at the bottom. And we will we're trying to get to 100 by the start of the season, the 2025 season. But yeah, we will see you all next time.